So today we are going to learn about a very important neurotransmitter, that is acetylcholine. Now we already know from our previous knowledge how acetylcholine is released, how it is reuptaken, how it is synthesized, and what is its functionality. So I will not go into a detail of that, but I'll just summarize at what is needed here. Now, what is an acetylcholine? Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter. Can anybody tell me which category of neurotransmitter does acetylcholine belong to?
Amine.
It belongs to amino acids, amines, and peptides. Can anybody just tell me what we learned in the last class?
Yes, ma'am, it belongs to amines.
Yeah. Can you tell me the others one? We had three categories, no?
Oh, yes, we had
Amino acids,
amino acids, amines, and
amines,
peptides.
and peptides. Can you tell me
Yeah.
some neurotransmitters of all these three?
Yes,
GABA,
ma'am. So,
gluten.
yeah,
The
Harshita, go
first
ahead.
one
Yeah.
is GABA, glycine, glutamate. They all belong to
Amino acids. ma'am.
amino acid group. Okay. Then we have the amine category. In that we have
Histamine, serotonin,
serotonin,
norepinephrine,
epinephrine.
dopamine.
So with that recapping and reflection of our previous class, let us move to our next class. Now for acetylcholine, one thing we have to know that it is the major and only hormone which is released, let me make a correction. The neurotransmitter which is released at the spinal motor neurons. So what is this motor neuron and where is it coming from? If you want to know what is a motor neuron and where does a motor neuron come from, what do you understand by a motor neuron? Anybody?
Ma'am, it's the kind of neuron that is responsible for bringing about motor activities.
Okay, that's good. Any idea if I go to the spinal cord section as where exactly they are coming from?
From the ventral side, the ventral horn.
Okay, fine. So let me just draw a spinal cord section for you and then this will become little clear for you. See, if this is a spinal cord, okay, we have the gray matter. First of all, we should know what is the gray matter. What is this? These are all gray matter, isn't it? Gray matter means what is it? It is rich
The
with
cell bodies, the
okay.
axon.
Yes. So it
Axon,
has
okay.
the yeah. So if it is a gray matter, definitely it is going to be what is it formed? This areas, everything over here, this all are gray matter. This is gray matter. This is gray matter. What we have outside is a white matter. White matter mainly consists of what?
Axons, nerve fibers.
Yes, nerve fibers, myelin sheets of the axons. So in a spinal cord, when we do a section of spinal cord, we get to see a picture something like this. Okay, we have a butterfly shaped gray horn. Okay, and what do we find? That this is what we call as the dorsal horn or the dorsal side of it, and this is what we call as the ventral horn or the anterior side. So this is anterior, this is posterior, or otherwise if you want to talk with ventral and dorsal, this is ventral root and this is the dorsal root. So normally what happens, any receptors, you remember it? Do you remember the receptors we have talked about? Pacinian corpus cells were one, isn't it? They were all cutaneous receptors and all that. So they were passing through the dorsal root ganglion of the spinal cord and they go into the dorsal side. Okay. Then what do? Suppose you take an instance as if you have touched a hot iron plate and immediately that heat information of hot is getting through these sensory nerve fiber and these make a synapse over a motor neuron. And this motor neuron is coming out from where? This motor neuron is coming out from this is called as anterior horn cell. This is called as anterior horn cell. Okay. And it is coming from the anterior side. So when I say it is a motor in the sense, I have the higher centers also who are going to affect my motor neuron. These higher tracts, this may be coming from the cortex. I can have fibers coming from the cortex, which will be called as corticospinal tracts. I may have tracts coming from other areas like vestibular apparatus, reticular formation. So I may have many of the descending fibers and all. Now, what is this descending fiber going to do? It is going to ultimately come. They will all come and influence my a horn cell, a motor horn cell, and this is what you call as alpha motor neuron, which is going to supply to the muscles. Now, when I say that acetylcholine is the major neurotransmitter which is released, that means if I just magnify this part, if this is a nerve terminal and these are the muscle endings, these are the synaptic vesicles, the neurotransmitter which is present in these synaptic vesicles is none other than your acetylcholine. Okay. So here when we say, okay, let me come back here. When we say that it is released by spinal motor neuron, we were referring to the motor neuron which was coming out from the spinal cord and innervating to the muscles. That means at the neuromuscular junction, there is the neurotransmitter which is released is acetylcholine. Now, what is the other thing? It is released at the presynaptic ganglion of sympathetic and parasympathetic neuron. In the previous class, we had talked about sympathetic and parasympathetic neurons. So what we have to remember is that in case of sympathetic, it is both, in case of parasympathetic, both pre and post ganglionic synapses, we are going to at both pre and post of the parasympathetic, the neurotransmitter which is released is acetylcholine. But in case of sympathetic, it is the presynaptic ganglion which is releasing the acetylcholine. So I hope you remember by now when we were talking there in our last lecture, where is this acetylcholine going to bind? It is going to bind to its receptors which are present at the postsynaptic end. And what are these receptors? They can be either muscarinic receptors or nicotinic receptors, based on to which of these substances they are going to respond to. If nicotinic receptors means they are responding to nicotine. Nicotine is going to mimic the action of acetylcholine. What about muscarinic? It is going to respond to muscarine. So how is it the life cycle of this neurotransmitter? This neurotransmitter, once released in the synaptic cleft, gets hydrolyzed by the enzyme acetylcholine esterase enzyme. Then it gets hydrolyzed in choline and acetic acid. Choline is taken back into it, by the choline transporter. It goes back with the help of it. So we know this is a import mechanism where along with sodium, the choline gets inside the nerve terminal, and choline, in presence of transferase enzyme, choline along with acetyl-CoA is going to get converted into acetylcholine. So this is about the life cycle of acetylcholine, and it remains, it goes into the vesicle and it remains stored inside the synaptic vesicles. Now coming to the functions, where are these acetylcholine found in the brain? So this is what is one thing which is very clear is that it's a major neurotransmitter which is released at the spinal cord level, means at the spinal motor neuron at the neuromuscular junction. Now the question is, where exactly other places do we find these acetylcholine? So referring to the acetylcholine system, we find that it is found within the brain, including the basal forebrain complex. What we see here is a basal forebrain complex and the pontomesencephalic cholinergic complex. Here you can see here this. Now what is ponto and what is what? See, in the brain stem, I hope you know that the central nervous system is divided into brain and the spinal cord. So as the brain ends, the spinal cord, the starting point of the spinal cord, before the spinal cord, there is something called as brain stem. This is that part of the brain stem. The brain stem is divided into three components, we can say. The uppermost being the midbrain, the middle being the pons, and the lower being the medulla. So what we see here is pontomesencephalic cholinergic complex. So we find that these the neurons which are coming from the pons and they are following this mesocephalic complex are going to the tectum. Tectum is what? It is the superior colliculus which is present in the midbrain. So we have the pontomesencephalic tegmental complex. So we find that many of the neurons, they are descending down to the medulla or maybe below, and then we have certain fibers which are going to our basal forebrain complex. This is a basal forebrain complex they form. So they are going to make this network. Now this network is important for what? It is involved in regulation of our sleep-wake state, motivation, reward, learning and memory. So along with the hippocampus, we know this system actually forms the memory circuit also many times. So what you see here, So since we don't need to go much in detail about the neuroanatomy here, let me just focus more on the functionality. That acetylcholine in the brain, through its complex of basal forebrain and pontomesencephalic tegmental complex, it is involved in regulation of sleep-wake cycle, in motivation, reward, learning, and memory. And what is most important for us to know is that it is a very important neurotransmitter of RAS. RAS is reticular activating system. Now for this, let me take a white screen and tell you where is RAS and what is the function of RAS. Okay. So is my white screen visible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you all here, or, whenever you feel bored, we all can have a chit chat. Fine. Let us go to the parts of the brain. So if this is the cortex, okay, cortex is going to get continuous, means the one which we are going, the hindbrain is midbrain. Then we have the pons, then we have the medulla, and then this gets continued as spinal cord. Okay. Now, where is this reticular formation present? So if I make a midsection here, okay, if I make a midsection here, onto these two sides, we have a structure called as thalamus. This is called as thalamus. Thalamus is the relay station for all the informations that has to reach to your cortex, either sensory cortex or the fibers which are coming from the motor cortex. I hope I'm making little sense to you that all sensory information from all parts of your body, they have to reach to a level of consciousness, and they all reach via the thalamus. So thalamus is the relay station for all these nerve fibers. Okay. Down to the thalamus, we have these subthalamic nuclei, okay, which forms the part of the basal ganglia. Then down to that, if you go, this is the part of the midbrain. Okay, we can have the midbrain here. So reticular formation, where are they present? Now this whole of these brainstem area, this is forming my reticular system. And why is this called as reticular system? It is as if somebody has, you have to take it like, so what I'm trying to say is, suppose you have taken a dove here, okay, and you take a small frame, which is actually is of a sieve structure. So what is that sieve structure? Maybe like this, okay. It's made up of a steel or maybe wood, whatever you. If you press this structure over the dove, what will you imagine now? What do you think will be the thing over here? How can you imagine the things over here?
And the dough will start to pop out.
It will try to pop out from these holes, isn't it? And what will you have here is these things, these structures, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So here what has happened, something very similar has formed. So it forms like a sieve-like structure. Do you agree with me? So we may take these pockets where your dove is coming out as the white matter. Okay. And in the middle, we may have the gray matter getting scattered. So here, this reticular formation which is present here is actually a meshwork. It's like a mesh. It's like a mesh of both gray and white matter. Now, why is it so important for us? Let me just tell you. It's very, very important in the sense. Okay, let me just. Did you understand the dove story? I'll erase it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now we'll do one thing. We'll just go and see here. Okay. Now this is my spinal cord. Okay. Here is my spinal cord. I have made a section. There is this horn cells. Okay. Then I am going to have my what? The tracts. Let me just show you some of these tracts. Okay. Let me just change the ink color and show it to you. Fine. So suppose I have taken the sensations, sensations from your lower part of the body, from middle part of the body, upper part of the body, or head and neck, whatever it is. So when there is information coming here, through the dorsal root ganglion, this information is being passed through my spinal cord. It goes to the medulla. In the medulla, it forms a synapse. And then what does it do? It crosses over these fibers. If this is my left side and this is my right side, these fibers are going to cross at the level of the medulla, and they are going to go ascend up, reach to the thalamus, as thalamus is my relay station. So via the thalamus, they are going to go to the internal capsule, and then what you find is they will just radiate like this, like a corona, as if it's like a crown-like structure. Now, my thing is that why reticular formation is so important is any information, whether it is any sensation of fine touch, whether it's of crude touch, or crude touch will go by another pathway. This is the fine touch pathway, and we call it as dorsal column tract. In case I have a time, I will teach you about this. So maybe sensations like pain, temperature. So let me draw a pain pathway for you. So if pain pathway, if this is like something is burning here, we have the free nerve endings. We have the dorsal root ganglion. It came here, gave a synapse. The fibers from here, they went up, they ascended up in the anterolateral system, went up to the thalamus. And from the thalamus, via these internal capsule, they will just radiate here. And you will feel a pain. Okay, you will find a sensation of pain. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is any information, whether it's a pain, temperature, crude touch, fine touch, vibrations, any kind of information which is going to the cortex is actually crossing this area, the brainstem area, and then reaching to the thalamus. What is happening is, as they are ascending up, they are going to give information to the reticular formation. So all sensations, what do they give? They give collaterals to the reticular formation. As they give collaterals to the reticular formation, your reticular formation gets what? It gets activated. Okay. Now you can think as if this reticular formation also gives impulses. It also gives fibers to the thalamus in the intralaminar area of the thalamus. And from there it goes to the cortex. Okay. Now when your RAS is on, if your RAS is on, what do I mean to say RAS? So when your RAS is on, when this reticular activating system is on, you are awake, alert, and aroused. What do I mean by this statement? Let me just tell you again. So let me just take my pointer. Yes. So as I've told you, all sensory informations, when they are reaching to the thalamus, from the thalamus, they will go to the cortex. So all the informations, all the sensory input, which is going to your brain, gives a collateral to the RAS. RAS is what? The reticular activating system. Where is it present? In the brainstem. Whom it is occupying? The medulla, pons, and the midbrain. That is one thing. Next, the most important part, another one is the descending tracts, all the informations which are coming from your brain, and they are going towards the spinal cord. As they are descending down, they even give information to your RAS. So RAS is somebody who is well aware of the sensory input and well aware of the motor output. Am I clear here? Any doubts? I hope I'm not talking to myself.
Yes, ma'am, it's clear.
So what is that you have understood by RAS? RAS is going to be very important with the sleep-wake cycle and for the phenomena where we say attention, when we talk about attention, when we talk about how the people is awake, aroused, alert and all that. So what do you understand by RAS? How will I tell about RAS? Where is its location? So now let me talk about RAS here. RAS is, what is RAS? Total full form of RAS?
Reticular activating system.
Yeah, reticular activating system. Can anybody tell me where is the location of RAS? Can anybody still try? What am I drawing?
Ma'am,
This
it's
is
present in the
midbrain.
brainstem.
Yes, midbrain, pons, medulla, and then it gets continued as spinal cord. So RAS is present in the brainstem. Okay. Why RAS is important for us?
Collaterals of all sensations are meters.
Yes. So all the sensations, whatever sensation it may be, you are getting the information to RAS. So any sensory input which is going via the spinal cord and going to the cortex, they will give collateral to RAS. So RAS is well aware about your sensory input. Okay. Next, this is also aware about what?
Motor information descending down.
Yes, it is also aware of the information which are coming down to the spinal cord. They will give an information to RAS. So don't you think RAS is well aware of everything? Okay. So you are aware of everything, the sensory input, motor output. Now, RAS itself also gives input to thalamus. So RAS is also connected to thalamus, and via the thalamus, it is going to keep all your cortex awake. So it's like the main switch to your house. So you understand that what is the main switch? So we have switches in every rooms where we can put on, put off. But if you want to make the whole house off, as we live, suppose in hotels and all, if you're leaving the room, you have the main switch where you just put off, everything is off. Whatever is the appliance, whatever this light, fan, everything gets off. RAS is something like that. Okay. Now, what happens to RAS when you are in sleep condition? So how do you sleep? When RAS is off, you go off to sleep. Nicely, you can sleep off. When RAS is on means it's quite active. What you're going to do? You're awake. You are awake. You are alert and you are aroused. You are in a wakeful condition. So on of a RAS keeps you awake, alert, aroused. Off of a RAS makes you go for sleep. That's why people who go for deep sleep, they are not aware of the sounds around them. They are not aware of much of the sensory inputs around them. You can find that people who are deep in sleep, even if you touch them, they may not be much aware of it. Okay. So they are not aware of the sound. They are not aware of any other sensory input until unless it is pain. Why pain is doing that? Pain gives very strong collateral, gives strong inputs to RAS. And RAS in turn is keeping whole of your cortex awake. So it makes you aware, okay, awake, alert, aroused, be aroused. We got a pain somewhere. So until unless you find a remedy to your pain, you will be well aware of the pain. So except for pain, most of the sensory inputs, they are almost off when you're in sleep. When you're awake, you have the visual inputs, you have the auditory inputs, you have the sensory input, you have the olfactory input, means you're able to smell. So RAS is one big main switch to your brain. RAS on, you're alert, awake, aroused. RAS off, you go off to sleep. Now, in this reticular activating system, all the synapses, the first site of fatigue for human being is not the muscles or nerve fibers, it's the synapses. So as you are, there is a stage will come when you will not be having much of response coming, there will be no much of neurotransmitters getting released to a response what you're giving. You have exhausted everything. You have exhausted your energy. You have exhausted your neurotransmitters. You by now have accumulated so many things. You may be deficient with hypoxia, maybe a state of hypoxia has reached if you're doing some physical activity.
Yes, ma'am, I had a question. So basically from this activation, so we can kind of conclude that the activation or inactivation of reticular activating system can be linked with fatigue, right? So like it
can be linked with sleep-wake cycle, can be linked with your sleep-wake cycle, with your motivation.
Exactly, I have a question with that only, the sleep-wake cycle. So basically, we know the phenomena of jet lag, right? So in case of jet lag, while we are traveling internationally through various time zones, our body is rested, but at the same time, we face this extreme fatigue after traveling. So can reticular activating system explain that? Because the body is rested.
Yes,
but
yes. It's a sleep-wake cycle, no? The sleep-wake cycle, as I told you, your hypothalamus along with RAS. So you have set your biological clock according to your country. Okay, your country time zone. Suddenly you are put into a country where you find day to be night and night to be day. And your body is getting little confused. Okay.
Yeah, so it's the same effect as the night shift duty that you mentioned.
Yes,
like,
it's the same. Jet lag, night day shift duties. That's what I don't know why nobody is advising it. But as for physiology or any physiology should tell them, these people in IT, that what is happening right now is, if you're making any shift, make it for long period of, okay, don't make it shift very frequent. Don't make it day night today, day night. Don't do that.
That way it is being accustomed with the whole thing. And
yes, let the body be accustomed to it. Let it be for 1 week, 15 days, and you continue for a few months. Now, what are the symptoms that you will get if there is an excess of acetylcholine? So usually we may have, if it is in a balanced way, if your neurotransmitters are released in a balanced way, they're restored in a balanced way, they maintain a homogeneous environment, it is there, no problem with it. But you do get symptoms when there is either an excess of that neurotransmitter or there is insufficiency of these neurotransmitters. So what are the symptoms that we see if there is an excess of acetylcholine? We may get mental fatigue, we may get nightmares, depression, anxiety. Again, you'll have to look at those circuits. It's a big topic to talk about depression and anxiety. We're not going to bring about here. What if there is insufficiency of acetylcholine? Again, you will be like, in an impaired cognition, you are not able to do any of the functions, any mathematical or logical problem solving, you're not able to do. Maybe you have certain issues with your emotions, you got more of rage, irritability will be there, attention will not be there, insufficient attention will be there. So we find that there is insufficiency of acetylcholine even in Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. So they have found that in these two diseases, there is insufficiency of acetylcholine along with other factors also. So cholinergic drugs are used in glaucoma, bladder disorder, and muscle weakness. So what are those cholinergic drugs? Like how we do it, they just give it. So we know that in case of when we have this myasthenia gravis, an issue with myasthenia gravis, so there is no issue with the receptors, probably with acetylcholine receptors. Acetylcholine is released, but receptors are not taking up, or there is an issue with that. Autoimmune disease have developed for these receptors. So the features will be like weakness of the muscles. So anticholinergics, what are they used? They're used mainly in treating with people with muscle spasm, people with schizophrenia.